Hello. I found a new field. I was just out hunting some baby rampardos, trying to get the shiny, and was thinking about Continentals. And I was going to do a team building video. So I thought I've been enjoying the sort of more unscripted rambling format. So why not give this a go? Planning on releasing this as the tournament starts. Currently it's about 8 o'clock Friday night before the Saturday night before the tournament starts. Yeah, so I thought I'd give you my thoughts. So basically, when it first came out, my initial thinking was, obviously the restrictions are quite tight, and in those situations, it always feels to me like it's good to pick things that are very specific counters. My first thought was, how am I going to get 2 counters in for dragons? How am I going to get 2 counters in for charms? Yeah, they were the main 2 things really. And then so obviously in my head I start thinking of steel types with that, because with it covering both. And I thought, well, if everyone else is thinking that way, then that makes steel types big, which means we're going to see counter users and we're going to see mud boys. So let's pick one that isn't an absolute disgrace versus those things. So obviously Skarmory would have been the prime one, probably 10 points, and I've tried to make it work, and I haven't found anything that I'm particularly happy with. So the next port of call was Bronzong or Jirachi. So I went Bronzong because I thought Gen 4. I thought Gen 4, a lot of the good picks were 6 points. There wasn't anything in 4 points that I really liked the look of. Perhaps Empoleon, but I've used that before in the past and I've not particularly enjoyed it. And I think it's important here to pick things you're comfortable with. I've used Bronzong in the past a few times and it's always done me well, so no reason to doubt Bronzong. So yeah, I thought that fills up the Gen 4 slot and it leaves the Gen 3 slot open, which obviously has a lot of strong 6 point picks, 4 point picks, and a lot of versatility in the 1 point as well. I initially had my eyes on Marshtomp as a 1 point mud boy, and I had my eyes on Flygon as a 1 point dragon that has access to ground moves. Shadow Dragon, Tail Dragon Claw. It's disgusting. So I wanted to keep that slot 3 open. So then my next thought process was, well, what if everyone does that? I want a fighter that beats Bronzong and Jirachi. So then I was looking at Scrafty and Obstagoon, and again sticking to the whole, use what you're comfortable thing. I went with Scrafty. Rose Cup was my best ever cup back in February 2020, and a lot of that was built on the back of using Scrafty. So I like Scrafty. I know a lot of matchups from using it in previous cups, so I went Scrafty. So then I was looking for, and then a lot of things happened. I was building in various directions, and I always found that I was weak to either Scrafty or Politoed. Which first of all was good because it meant, I've got Scrafty in there, and if other people are having the same problems as me, then there's going to be a lot of teams that Scrafty's going to be able to put work in against. So that was good. So then I couldn't quite find anything I was happy with. I ended up with Dragalge in a few drafts, and I do like Dragalge a lot. Having used it in Commander Cup before the Dragon Tail buff, but the problem then is that you've got a poison type that doesn't beat charm, which means you've got to either, from my perspective, wanting to run 2 charm counters, it would have meant I'd have had to have run a fire type, which I wasn't particularly keen on because, as I say, I think there's going to be a lot of, if not mud boys, water types. I think there's going to be a lot of dragons as well, and a lot of fires are fairly inflexible. I know Continentals is always popular, but it's just a bit, I don't know. I was keen not to run a fire, which then means I've got to run another poison type as a fairy counter, which then means I've got double poison, which does leave me a bit weak to Bronzong, which I think is going to be popular. So I was keen to not run Dragalge as a in there. So things changed, and I thought, well, if I'm always weak to Politoed or Scrafty, let's try and build with Politoed and Scrafty. So yeah, put Politoed and Scrafty in there. Put Politoed in there with Scrafty and Bronzong, and quite liked it. Really liked it. So then was looking for the second. Was looking for the second charm counter and the second dragon counter. Now I want the second charm counter or the second fairy counter to be not weak to ground, because obviously Bronzong's weak to ground. Ideally I wanted it to not be weak to fire or dark either, and that sort of thing. And ideally I wanted it to be super effective or have some good moves that hit Scrafty. And again, going back to the whole theme of using what you're comfortable with, I went Golbat. I don't really like many of the 4-point picks across the board, really. I think a lot of the 4-point picks are there because they're too good to be 1 point, and they're just a lot of them just clearly aren't in the same tier as the 6-pointers. I think Obstagoon's undervalued at 4 points. I wonder if it's there to try and stop people from picking Charm, with a lot of the Charm users as 6-pointers in that slot. Like Obstagoon's better value in that slot for my mind. So yeah, so Golbat was the 4-point that I liked. The reason I didn't run Obstagoon was because because of the Scrafty beats Obstagoon. I thought the dark counter users were going to be big in this meta, and I think they are. So I wanted the one that wins out of the two of them. So I went Golbat. I've had a lot of success with Golbat as well. Again, Rose Cup, Golbat, Scrafty were big parts of my success there. And again, that was before the Poison Fang buff. So I think it's a great pick. And because it's flying, it's not inherently weak to Mud Blaze. Like, it still has the bait games versus Wishcash. It's quite bulky, so it's not going to enjoy Hydro Cannons from Swampert or Weather Balls from Politoed. Certainly not going to enjoy Stone Edges from Quagsire, but I don't think we'll see Quag. But it's more playable than. Well, I could have gone for a Grass Poison. I suppose I could have gone for Roserade. That's 4 points, or even Ivysaur as 1. Like, I've used Ivysaur in the past, and I think it's a big step down from Venusaur, so I was keen to avoid that. But yeah, I could have gone Grass Poison to beat Mud Boys, but then there's the double fire weakness on my fairy counters, which I wanted to avoid. So yeah, so I went Golbat, and that 4 I was really, really happy with. Yeah, Scrafty, Bronzong, Politoed, Golbat, really, really happy with. There's some good calls in there, they cover each other well. I think it's very hard to run like, when I was looking at things that beat Politoed, Scrafty and Bronzong in particular, there's not a great deal that beat all three comfortably. I think it came out like the biggest threat when I looked on PvPoke was like a Lowland Raichu or something, which I thought with 6 points was going to be bold. As good a man as it is, I'm not sure it's worth 6 points. But so I went from there, and then I was looking for the dragon counter that wasn't awful versus fire. And I ended up on, well, when the meta first dropped, I thought Lapras is going to be awesome, because it was the dragon counter that didn't poo the bed versus fire because of Surf. Obviously, and Ice Shard Surf, it's a great safe switch Lapras. So I was quite keen to have that, but then I thought, well, if Bronzong and Scrafty are going to be a thing, don't really want that. And obviously I want Golbat instead. So I looked at the 1 point picks, and there was a couple in Hoenn slot 3 that I quite liked. Celio was a good downgrade, but the one that really took my fancy was Milotic. I spoke about it on Chat and Shit before. I just think it's a really interesting mon between Dragon Tail and Surf. It's got plenty of play versus dragons and fires, and also like Dragon Water is a really tough pairing. Like Dragon Water as 2 individual mons, or even in the single mon in the case of Kingdra or Palkia, for example, it's a really difficult pairing to cover. So having a water type that does that beats the dragons by virtue of doing dragon damage and chipping away with Surf, and that beats most water types by virtue of doing heavy neutral damage with Dragon Tail and chipping away at Surf, was really nice. Yeah, when I think of like water types, because there's so much choice there, like my mark of like a good water type or a water type that I enjoy using is often something that beats Lapras and Celio. Celio, of course, is spamming away the body slams for huge neutral damage. Lapras can get to your skull bashes and things can get out of hand defensively with Lapras. And Milotic beats Celio really comfortably. I think it can even win at a 0 to 1 shield disadvantage. So that's good, and it's pretty solid versus it beats Lapras, generally speaking. I think things can get a bit hairy if you let through a skull bash, but I don't think Lapras is going to be common anyway, to be honest. So yeah, went Milotic. I'm still not sure what second move I want to run on Milotic. I've been using it in GBL, and very rarely do you get to the second move anyway. Or when you do, you want to go double Surf. It's Blizzard or Hyper Beam, and the thing is, in the case of countering dragons, obviously you'd think Blizzard would be the way to go, but by the time you've done enough Dragon Tail damage to get to the Blizzard, all you really need is a Surf anyway, or you can just shield and farm down. So to be honest, I don't think it really matters, because I think I'm going to go all tournament without pressing the second move. So I haven't decided that. I'll look into that tonight. So yeah, that was the 5th member. And I've talked up Milotic in Prismatic Cup, which and then didn't use it, and so I'm keen to get to use it. Been using it a bit in GBL, as I say, and I really quite like it. So that left me with 1 pick to go, and that was a 1 point pick in slot 6. I think slot 6 is awful. Awful to the point where at one point I was considering running a Charmer, which is just like, I didn't think the words would leave my mouth, really. As I say, I looked quickly at Trigalgy. I thought that was the standout pick, to be honest. And Trigalgy and Obstagoon I thought were the standout picks. But, as I say, whenever I ran with Obstagoon in my builds, I always was desperately trying to find the extra 2 points to build to get to Scrafty, and I didn't like the fact that Trigalgy made me run a second Poison or a second Steel or a Fire. So there was 1 point picks, and the 1 point picks I was considering from the beginning were Quilladin, which I was at some point quite confident I was going to use. Quilladin. There was Fletchinder, which I thought was going to be, which I thought would be an interesting pick, as a charm counter that isn't particularly weak to ground or mud boys or fire. But it's an expensive build, Fletchinder. It's not like above level 40, but Ember, Flame Charge, Aerial Ace, don't know about that. So I never quite convinced. I did a few practice games with Charizard, and Charizard was impressive, but mainly with Wing Attack for being able to deal with Scrafty as well. And the other one was Galarian Rapidash, which a while back, I think during January, I talked about the state of the game and about how important it is that Razor Leaf is good, or Razor Leaf is a good option, and how important fairy types are, and how it's important that Charm's good. And I think back then I said that Galarian Rapidash might have a big impact, and it's really not. It's really not had that impact. But I think we're not seeing many Charmers being used, and so that is leading to I think people will probably feel a bit more comfortable running Dragons, running Fighters, running Darks, and when Scrafty and Obstagoon are such big parts of that, I really wanted another counter to Scrafty, given that before that I had Politoed and Milotic, which are neutral. I think Politoed tends to beat Scrafty. Scrafty usually beats Milotic. I had Bronzong, which gets absolutely battered. I had the Mirror, which is never nice to rely on. And I had Golbat, which was the one counter. So I wanted another Scrafty counter. For a while I had Quilladin in there. I really liked it being versatile with Body Slam, because I was a bit concerned about Azu, but I decided that the need to cover Scrafty was more pressing. I also, we started to see a few Galvantulas now, which Galvantula's always solid. I don't personally, it's not bulky enough for me to want to use in this sort of open meta. But a few people are using it, and I haven't really got a Galvantula counter. Like Bronzong was the best thing to take on Galvantula. So I wanted something else that wasn't awful versus that, and Rapidash is spammy with the Body Slams, so it's not a good matchup. Generally it'll lose, but it's running it close. So yeah, I went with Rapidash. Galv, as I say, is probably the big weakness, but now I think 3 of the 8 APAC teams that qualified had Galv. I think roughly 1 in 6 or 1 in 7 or whatever it was of the North American teams had Galv. So we'll see how well they do. But I think if the North Americans with Galv do well, I think we'll see a few panics from European players tonight to bring more ground types in. And I wonder whether I think Galv doing well will, rather than make people bring Galv, will make people bring Galv counters. So we'll see less Galv. So that's what I'm hoping for anyway. And it's not the sort of thing that's bulky enough to run through an entire team. Like, it struggles to switch in on Golbat and Politoed, and Rapidash as well. Of course, Bronzong will beat it. Milotic is not the best matchup in the world for it. Scrafty, I think Scrafty can win zeros, so it's not a huge disadvantage. The other thing that I'm fearing a bit is Pelipper. But again, like, the things that I'm fearing are all 6 points, which is good, because I feel like I'm not going to face a team where there's 2 or 3 things on there that I'm really struggling against. I think we'll see Galv, Obstagoon, Pelipper would be about as bad as I could think up right now. But again, I don't think I'm terrible versus that. I'd struggle, but I think I've got answers there. And I think that's just generally the way this meta is. And I think if I could have found a Skarmory team that I liked, I think I'd have gone Skarm. And if I qualify, maybe I'll spend a bit more time going for a Skarm team. I don't know, but let's not get too far ahead of myself. But yeah, I think going for the threats here is the way. I think 6-6-4 with 3-1s is probably the way. We'll see what other people do. But yeah, that was the team. Fingers crossed it goes well. And yeah, I'm sure I'll post the videos up after I finished. Catch you later.